Okay, so now I would like to introduce one of our guests today. This is my Nina. Her name is Francisca Escobar. She has served with Goleta Unified School District in Santa Barbara for over 30 years as an educator and specifically in 2nd and 6th grade teaching. Currently, she does K through 6 interventionalist specialist, and that's with reading and math. She's taught at UC Santa Barbara and Chapman University Graduate Schools of Education in second language acquisition courses. Outside of work, she's involved in many organizations such as Delta Kappa Gamma, Women's Professional Society, and People Helping People. And she is committed to outreach for youth, seniors, food, and housing. And with both organizations, she served on the board for many years previously.
All right, and my guest is Amanda Greenleaf. I am currently an instructional aide for her classroom. Amanda teaches a special education and specializes in language communication. She's earned her master's in of arts in education from CSU Monterey Bay. She holds an education specialist instruction credential. She has 20 years of experience working with youth, including 8 years as a special education teacher. She served as a member of an instructional leadership team, art leadership team, the superintendent council, and lead the positive behavior interventions and support team. She also uses culturally responsive teaching and social emotional learning to facilitate her teaching practices.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer and Louis, for introducing our wonderful interviews today. So we want to take time to dig a little deeper in getting to know them, of course, and find out, a little more about them and their role as educators. So let's go ahead and begin. Okay, so we would like to know, and for interviews to expand on their identity and background in education and what's their role outside of school. So either Francisca, Ms. Escobar, or Ms. Greenleaf can go first. We, of course, it's a panel, so we have to take account into the timing, but we would like to know more about you both. So whoever wants to jump in first, go ahead.
Oh, it's unmuted. I can start. Thank you for having us. I appreciate your interest in education and future leaders. I congratulate you because this is a difficult and changing and evolving field. My background is as a first-generation college student, first generation born in the United States. My family stems from Mexico and some parts of Europe. And we were born and raised in the Central Valley in Tulare County, early Mart, California. And it was a small farming community of about 800 people. So our vision for the future, or our identities, were wrapped very much around that small community, mostly of farm working families from Spanish-speaking backgrounds. We had next to us a Black township, Teviston, California. And then in Delano, most of the folks there were from Asian background. And then all of the encompassing European folks were mostly the farmers from different European countries. So it was a mixture of folks, but I mostly identify as Latina, as a Chicana, and that is comes from my parents' background and also their involvement with the social justice movements of the 60s, mostly with the Farm Workers Union, Cesar Chavez and the Kennedy brothers and Martin Luther King and those folks that came and made appearances at our town. So we were able to see possibilities for our future, but it was very limiting in that small town. So we went through the educational system there. It was a K 8 school that we went to, very diverse, and limited resources for our parents that were of mixed races and limited English. So there were most of the responsibilities, I think, of getting information from schools was put on most of us children. And that was a hard place to be, trying to be the advocate for your family, trying to be the translator, trying to be a student, trying to be a model for your community. And then once those of us that chose to go off to college, all of the hopes and dreams of our town and of our people were put on us. And that was a heavy responsibility, and one that I took very seriously, and was able to move forward with my educational pursuits. I graduated from UC Santa Barbara several times with a BA in Spanish and Portuguese literature. I went on to get a teacher credential in elementary and secondary in Spanish. I went on to get a master's and a doctorate in educational psychology, and then have taught various places throughout Santa Barbara County in different roles. Most currently, I'm an intervention specialist right now at the Goleta Union School District in Santa Barbara County, working with students K through 6th grade. In the mornings, I work at Isla Vista School, which is a school of about 24 different languages, 40 countries represented. We are right next to UC Santa Barbara, which gives us opportunity to interact with many different folks that come from throughout the world, to come as guest lecturers, as postdoctorates, as international students. And then I forgot what I was going to say. Anyway, but in the afternoons, I also work as an intervention specialist at El Camino School, which is a dual immersion school, and working with students that are struggling in Spanish language. I don't know if that meets all the requirements. Oh, what I do outside of school, I've always been, I have not been a stellar student. And one of the things that kept me motivated throughout school was sports. I played basketball until my junior year of college. And that was something that was a driving force. If I wanted to do sports, I had to do well in school. And that motivated me to continue on even as an adult. I was involved for many years in a triathlon club and did triathlons and century and half century rides. And so that gave me a good work play balance. I don't know if that answers the first question or not.
Awesome. Thank you, Ms. Escobar. So, Ms. Greenleaf, would you like to share a little more?
Sure. Francisca, I have to tell you, I have family in the Central Valley as well. So just a little connection there that I thought was interesting. Not many people from those little towns. So I am both Cherokee and white. Like 80% of teachers in the US, I'm identified as white, and 70% I'm female. So I think it's really important to acknowledge that, especially because the students I work with, most of them do not identify as I do. And so I try to be cognizant of that whenever I'm in the room. I was an aide and a behavior tech for many years before becoming a teacher. And I always knew that my goal was to teach special education. I volunteered when I was 14 and ever since with students who have disabilities. And that was where my passion was. So I wanted to blend all of the different experiences I've had and make it into, learning experience for them. I also identify as an introvert, and in a very social, extroverted job. I'm outside of my comfort zone a lot, hence this interview. I have worked in 4 different school districts. The 2 that I've taught in, one was a Title I school. I absolutely love both districts. The one I'm currently in is one of the top public schools in California. So I really enjoy seeing and being able to compare the 2 it's also really heart-wrenching seeing the inequality that we have throughout our public schools and in such a short distance. Outside of work, I work. I'm trying to get better at this. But I spend about 3.5 hours after contracted hours trying to prepare and just plan and organize. That is a big step forward for me. So practical advice for you guys, I guess, is just there is a lot of work outside of work, but when I'm not working, I am trying to just find balance, and I enjoy going to national parks and taking road trips with my husband and visiting family.
I just want to acknowledge this on a very deep level and affirm that sentiment, both of them, for sure. And I'm Erin, by the way, and this is I'm the instructor, but the scholars have created this wonderful experience for you all. And I think that, yeah, teaching can never end, but except when it does. So appreciate you saying that.
Thank you both for sharing your experiences. It's super apparent that both of you are passionate about education and being a part of your community, and I admire and appreciate that. So thank you for both sharing your experiences. We now would like to learn more about both of your teaching philosophies and how they apply to working with culturally diverse students and students with disabilities. Both of these questions apply to both of the student bodies you advocate for. The two of you are free to bounce ideas and answers off of each other since this is a panel. Maybe since Miss Escobar started last time, we can have Miss Greenleaf start this time. But the questions are, what does culturally responsive teaching mean to you? And how do you advocate for students with disabilities and English language learners?
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So there are many strategies that you guys will learn and find about culturally responsive teaching. When it comes down to it, to me, it's really about getting to know all of your students and being able to use who they are and what they contribute in our teaching. And so I try to do that at a deep level. I also, so some more like tangible things is I really try to use multiple perspectives when I bring content to our class, and I try to choose quality literature, not just anything to, you know, fill in the different demographics, but choosing quality literature from anybody I can find that can provide it. Likewise, I try to be very selective in what I teach, and it can be challenging to kind of go against our grain and also teach things that are uncomfortable, but that are necessary. And one thing that's really imperative to my teaching is using restorative justice principles, which is this idea of bringing the community together to solve problems and build community. And that is, I think, probably the biggest thing that somebody might notice in our class, I hope, is that level of community. So one way that I do that is through circles and using a talking piece. These are, this is just a way of, again, communicating as a group and problem solving and interacting as equals between me and the students and all of the adults in our class, rather than me always being the keeper of the knowledge and just, you know, you listen as empty vessels to what I have to say, is very contrary to how I teach. And so I think that all of the students in my class have value to bring. And so I'm just trying to give them the skills to empower them to share what they have with the world. As far as advocating, I really am trying to help them find their own voice, but especially working with students who have autism, they don't always necessarily have the ability to do that. And in a way that everybody at least can understand or will listen to. And so I do take my position as being an advocate for them very seriously, for all of my students, not just those with autism. And one area where that is really needed is in communicating with the coworkers at our schools. So most teachers have very good intentions, but there's a lot of stigma still associated with English language learners and students with disabilities and students of color. And so just no matter where I'm teaching, I'm trying to at least do my best to look through a lens of equity and bring up anything, not trying to be like nitpicking, but if I see injustice, I need to call it out. And if I see students whose needs are not being met, then I need to see what I can do to help them get met. And so having good relationships with my coworkers is really important in order to be able to have a voice for my students. And then as well as just having really good relationships with the parents and the families. So those are the main things, I think.
Like Amanda, I think it's very important to create a safe space in your classroom for students and for families and maybe for other colleagues to be able to see the importance and the value of each of your students. I know that for me, and especially more recently, there have been a lot of opportunities through the Anti-Defamation League, and we were part of an Ally to Accomplice workshop this year about social justice. And now there are so many organizations, there's groups and folks that go through a lot of the literature that is available now, that is being put out, and authentic literature, not so much about a Native person written through a white perspective, or a European perspective talking about people of color. So I think now there are so many resources out there, and that I challenge you to be able to take those opportunities, because there are so much authentic literature out there now that creates an opportunity for you to have those represented voices in your classroom in all areas that you address. And also something that is important to me when I'm thinking about my students and the teaching approaches that I take is always learning. Like I said, I'm at a school that has about 25 different languages, 40 something cultures represented. So it's quite a challenge and an opportunity to bring in those different perspectives through literature, through song, through dance, through cultural celebrations, and honoring that and inviting excuse me, those folks in our community and in our school community that are represented to share their knowledge. I think that's always a strength of our school, that we have the university so close to us and have so many different folks working on so many different projects and books and workshops and seminars, that we have an opportunity to tap into those resources. Something that also is important for me is, like Amanda, creating that the positive intervention program that we have also, and the restorative justice, and having students and sometimes even families and parents be the ones that are the keepers of the of setting expectations and then setting consequences up too, because I think that's so important, especially with students that have disabilities or second language learners. I think that it is imperative that the schools have established procedures and protocols for bringing their data teams together and their MTSS process together, so that it represents those folks that traditionally have been marginalized or have sometimes out of the norm needs that need to be met. We are fortunate that we have also social workers and community liaisons at our schools that can bridge the gap sometimes between teachers that may not be as comfortable or have the background knowledge or language ability to connect with some of the families. And like I said, we have over 25 different languages. None of our teachers have all of those expertise, but because we're so in close proximity with the university, we have a lot of resources at our disposal. We have a special autism program through the university. Also, we have intervention specialists and special day classes we have 9 schools in our district, K through 6. And so we're quite fortunate to have different programs available for different students, but it is sometimes painstaking and it takes years sometimes to qualify students for special services and even for students that have social emotional problems or outside of the traditional normed kind of things. If they have problems with speech, problems with aggressiveness or defiance, those types of things that are hard to collect hard data on. And so using our kind of ethnographic lens at looking at the whole child and what does that mean, I think that's a big advantage for us as we move forward. And especially you young folks that are starting out in your careers, like Amanda said, is looking at creating safe spaces in our classroom and also making sure that we advocate for our students through hopefully an established protocol and procedures and systems in your schools. And if that's not available, advocating for that too, because that really, I think, puts together a whole team approach to looking at the child. And that's something that I feel very fortunate that we've had in our schools. We have something called a data team meetings that we have several times a year where the psychologist comes, the speech therapist comes, the intervention teachers come, the art teacher, the music, the librarian. We all come together to look at students and different aspects that we all bring to the table and how we can support the child throughout the school day at our schools.
Thank you so much. Thank you both so much for sharing your views on advocating for students. We know that it's kind of an uphill battle, but as teachers and as educators, we absolutely try our best to be there for the students. And it's a daily struggle. Obviously, things may not sometimes go the way that we want them to. But if you had the ability to, what changes in the school system would you like to see? That like things that you can change to kind of, I guess, help students, I guess, have their voices be heard, or have the students be better understood. What are some changes that you would like to make in the school system to kind of help advocate for those students?
I think that there's a lot that could be done. And one for me right now, my answer would probably change day to day as I think about this, but off the top of my head, I'm really thinking about the resources that are available to some students and not all. And so for me, that's a really big priority right now, is just thinking about students in my prior district and now, and the teachers and the teaching, a lot of that is very similar, but there's also just our students who are living in poverty are at such a disadvantage that they don't even realize, I did not even realize just what zip code you're in, how big of a difference that makes on your education and then on your later quality of life. So giving, so I think that that's just institutional, something that we need to change. I don't have all the answers for that, but in my own sphere of influence, I try to provide my students with as many opportunities as I can, depending on, which group I'm working with. So in that last school, field trips were very important to me, exposing them to different ideas and different people and different just experiences. And then in this current district that I'm working in, I think they have so much privilege, a lot of them, and they have, they're just in a really good position right now. So I think for me, working on just opening their eyes and expanding their bubbles a little bit to see what life is like for others is very important to me.
I think it's important that we advocate for system changes at our school that could be very doable. I know that for us at our school currently, and we didn't start here. I've been at the district for 30 years, so we've seen ebbs and flows with the types of supports that are available to students. But I think one of the shifts that have happened last I would say 10 years is that we are now really engaged in the professional learning communities in our schools. And what that does for us is it allows us to have every day we have an opportunity to meet as a grade level team. And that is due to the fact that we have a PE specialist, an art and music specialist, we have a computer specialist and library time. So each of the times that that's available, the teachers are released to meet daily. And one day is to look at some assessments that teachers have given through exit cards or a benchmark assessment or a more of a curriculum-based assessment, and look at where students fall. The next day, we might be able to plan some intervention and extension activities for some students that are still needing support and some new students that have reached the benchmark and need some extension. And then the next day, we can actually prep the lessons. And then the fourth day, we can actually get together and see how any of those opportunities for the students helped or didn't help. And we are a Title I school, and with that comes funds. And I think that as you begin your career, asking questions about how those resources are allocated, because sometimes all of those funds are used to fund someone like me, an intervention specialist, versus having an art and a music and a drama and a computer lab and PE. So I think asking those questions sometimes is hard, but also necessary. And also that gives us an opportunity then as a team to look at not just my students, but our students as a grade level in whatever grade I'm working with at the time. Then we have an opportunity several times a year to meet in data teams, which means the entire grade level, the entire school gets together and looks at different opportunities for students or how they're doing based on whatever measures we're using to assess. And then from there, we have student success teams, and that is bringing in the families now and all the different people involved with supporting the student. And it doesn't always lead to support for the student, but it begins a conversation of, this student is in first grade, this is what I'm seeing, it's documented, so that the next year in second grade, if this student is still struggling with aggressive behaviors or with reversals or with some types of things that aren't always easily measured, we can continue to advocate and support that. And then that's where my role comes in, as I look at students that are not meeting the standards for whatever reason, and I work with them individually or in a small group to give them that additional support. And it could look like a 10-minute intervention every day, just going over letters and sounds, or it can look like a half an hour of actual literacy time where I'm trying to teach long vowels or short vowels, or it could be some math extensions for some students that are meeting the benchmarks. So I think having systems in place in schools that sometimes seem like far-reaching, sometimes are very doable with some really creative approaches and working as a team. I think that's the biggest bang for our buck is getting all our heads together and seeing how best we can support students, and making sure that as a district, we're only a K-6 district, so we feed into the Santa Barbara School District that is K-12. And so navigating some of those resources for our students when they go to the bigger school districts sometimes is a challenge, but I think giving them opportunities to have all those enrichment opportunities, I think in the younger grades is essential. And sometimes that's where students thrive, their music time or their art time or their PE time, or the, like someone said, the field trip, or bringing in the cultural dance or music or foods. We have a cultural celebration every year at the end of the year where families come and students perform and they sing and they dance, and we have foods, and it's a very community feel. And I think that takes also some opportunities for us to expand beyond just the school day.
Awesome. Okay, there we go. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's just, yeah, very insightful. Yeah, it's a lot of work, obviously, as teachers. We're trying to invent new ways of, helping, advocating for the students. I especially love the idea of creating programs, things to kind of, just facilitate their creativity, outlets, things that they can do to kind of express who they are, because, not everyone specializes in, one thing or another. So just as an art teacher myself, I really enjoy the idea of having those options open. I myself, that was the only way I can express myself when I was younger, is through art and through writing, things like that. So I think that like more programs and more things like that are especially helpful for students, especially with we're in a very difficult time right now with pandemic, and or rather we're going through the we're going through the pandemic. And so yeah, it's really great that to get your insight on just different ways that we can help advocate for students, and different ways that we can change that. So we're going to do a slight transition, speaking of the pandemic and everything like that. Let's see, sorry, give me just a moment here. Alrighty. Yes. Teaching can be very strenuous. Yeah, and again, especially with a COVID and the pandemic and everything like that, it definitely adds an extra level of stress on top of what teachers already go through, whether it be, with students in the classroom, or maybe even, challenges with maybe administration. So I guess we want to kind of get your take on different ways to manage stress and manage health to kind of avoid that teaching burnout. And we're going to transition into the next slide for that.
Yeah, so really what we want to know here is, how do you persevere as an educator, and what are some self-care tools that each of you utilize to take care of yourself outside of your role as an educator?
I think for me, it's always been something physical. We've started a group, with some teachers during lunch where we do some walks, or we, like I said, I was part of a triathlon club for a long time. I have ridden my bike all over California and into Mexico, and I just love the outdoors and connecting with nature. Also, I played, like I said, basketball for a long time, and then after I started my teaching, was involved with intramural sports, with anything that I could do physically, I think was really a good outlet for myself. And I think that it's unfortunate that so many times we are told as educators that self-care is really important, but yet during the school day, there's very superficial treatment of that opportunity. You know, we're just bombarded constantly with meetings and with extra supports for our teachers, and those of us that are in education are always going to be on. I mean, you go to the grocery store and you're like, okay, slow down here, no running, and you have to be reminded, you know, by your partner or your child, you are not on duty right now. And that's, you know, it's just naturally our instinct. You know, you see, you know, you're at the park and you're like, okay, everybody get in line. Oh, stand behind this. You know, I'm in the park. And I'm like, just because it's so part of who we are, and disassociating from that sometimes is just impossible. So what I've tried to do also is become involved with my community. As Jennifer said at the beginning of I was part of Delta Kappa Gamma, which is a women's organization, and we meet monthly and we do a book study, or we bring in community resources, or we just do, you know, someone teaches us to belly dance, whatever it is. It's just a group of educators coming together with a shared experience, because knowing that it's an outlet for us is really important, but also that fellowship with folks that are in the same profession as us. And then I'm also part of an organization called People Helping People, and that is a social kind of a hub for the San Ynez Valley that is very, very isolated, and it's still part of Santa Barbara County, but we are very far north, and the furthest north is Santa Maria and then Santa Barbara, where most of the resources go to, and we're right in the middle. And so this organization helps with homeless prevention, helps with mental health wellness, it helps with social justice issues. We have several advocates in the schools. We work with seniors and with teens and with substance abuse. And so we, I think, are part of the community, and that also helps me be part of the community, advocate in a different way, not so much just for students and in the classroom, but also reaching out further beyond the school, because it is in a community that I don't teach in. So it gives me opportunity to be connected and to develop those connections. And also always, when I have a question in education, or I'm struggling with something, or I want to bring in a different perspective, for example, I've always been able to look for these outside partnerships that I have with other folks and with other organizations. And always there's a link, or someone that knows something, or someone, or just a way of connecting all the dots for me professionally and personally.
So I would just, I love all the things that Francisca had to say, and so I'll just focus a little bit on things that were not mentioned yet. One would be that I have found a lot of help in implementing things that are important for my own self-care throughout my school day. So for example, doing mindfulness. And then during the pandemic, I had my students virtually, we made grateful jars, and then we would add something that we're grateful for every single day. And that is something that I've kept since leaving remote teaching and going to a new school and everything. It's something I've kept. And so those are two examples that I can do every single day, and I'm accountable because I know it's important for the students too, not just me. And so when with mindfulness, it's not something that you can teach if you're not also practicing it. It's, you're going to be uptight telling somebody else to breathe when yourself is, wound up. Doesn't work. So that is very helpful. And then the other thing, which is just the pandemic again had really helped me with this, is, and it's still a work in progress, but accepting myself and letting go of my ideal self, and recognizing that I'm just recognizing my limits and the season that I'm in. So there's been times where I love painting, I love hiking, I have these things that I love to do, but this idea of self-care can also become another thing that we feel like we're failing at, or another thing that we have to fit in to our day. And so I am just really finding peace and joy in minimalism physically, but also with my schedule, and trying to just say, you know, it's okay. I can still love these things, but right now, if I need to just rest, it's okay. And not necessarily have an answer for the self-care. So I think implementing what you can in the classroom, but also just accepting and doing what you actually need for yourself. So for me, again, being introverted, I'm around people all day, every day. And so I need some time to myself to recuperate. And so I'm honoring that for myself at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you so much both for sharing with us. I think all of those things that you shared are wonderful tips for how to embrace yourself and the things that serve you as an educator, but also, you know, so you staying healthy as well. So now we would like to open the conversation up with the rest of the class. Yes, so if anyone has any questions for our interviewees, now is the time. Oh, okay, I see Elizabeth has her hand up. Elizabeth, go ahead.
Hi, good morning. I have a question for both, but I'll start off with Ms. Amanda Greenleaf. You just mentioned that you implemented gratefulness jars, and I'm very intrigued how you implemented that, especially during the pandemic.
Amanda, you're muted.
A newbie move. So I didn't create the idea, but I noticed early on that with our pandemic, the students were going to be experiencing this whole thing at a different level, and often knew more than parents wanted or thought that they knew. And so one way that I felt that we could work toward, you know, taking care of our own social and emotional well-being was doing this practice of gratefulness. And so I invited the students and families to just get any jar that they had, you know, that they didn't have to spend money on. And then anybody who didn't have one, including in my current class, I just got mason jars. And then we decorated those with tissue paper, and then they just literally just write either a word or a sentence, and depending on the day and also our writing needs, I would encourage them to write either a paragraph or just a sentence or just a word that's sticking out to them. And it was really well received. And so we continued to do it. And I have to say, the students are so precious. Like one of my students this year, and I don't read them all, but when I do get the chance, it's so lovely to see. And they're like, they'll mention people by name. Mr. Stokes gets some mentions in there too. And they'll mention everybody by name and what they do for them. And you really can see it lived out in their life when they're, you know, coming from a place of gratefulness.
And I think too, like she said, incorporating that into your daily practice. I have intervention students, so I have very little time with them, sometimes a half an hour, sometimes 45 minutes, sometimes 20 minutes. But I always start with a grounding activity. And we are part of a program that we use in the other classrooms called Inner Explorer. And that's a mindfulness also, that technique that they use. But I do just the minute ones. They have you know, a 5-minute one or a 10-minute one. And sometimes they're asked to close their eyes, and some kids are not comfortable with that. So we went out to our garden and got a rock, and they painted it, and they have it in their box that they can focus on if they don't want to close their eyes. Also, the teachers always begin the day with a morning meeting, and they check in with students, usually with a greeting in different languages, or through sign, or through just different, they can just say hello, they can say thumbs up, they can just greet, however they want to do that. And we also have in each classroom something called I wish my teacher knew. I don't know if this is based on a book or something, but anytime a student or has a reflection piece, and once a week the teacher goes into the box and it says, I wish my teacher knew that I'm always hungry, or I wish my teacher knew that we have a new baby coming, or I wish my, and so it's whatever they're feeling. And sometimes they just want to release that and someone to acknowledge that, not any answers or any accolades or any put on the spot, but just as a teacher, so that you know that they can do that. And some kids are comfortable saying that in kindergarten. They'll just blurt it out. I wish my teacher know I have a tummy ache. Okay, you have a tummy ache. But anyway, that's also just some grounding activities that students can do on a daily basis that really give us an opportunity to get them to know them a little bit better.
My other question is for you, Miss Francisca Escobar. Just the school that you mentioned sounds wonderful. I want to go work there because of all the programs that you mentioned that they have for the staff. And so one of the questions is, with so many languages, 24, what are other strategies that you use to kind of facilitate that for the students and the staff?
Right. We have at our school, we have two different ELD components. One ELD component that we have is our dedicated ELD time, and then we have integrated ELD time. And the ELD time that we have that it's dedicated is from 8:30 to 9. The entire school does ELD or something called ALD. And the students are leveled depending on where they fall in. There's an English test that they take, or there's an input test that they take. And so the students are leveled based on whatever level they test out at. And for example, if we're in first grade and there's some kids that are speaking multiple languages but have limited English, let's say, there's 5 or 6 different languages and there's 10 students, one of the teachers will take that small group and do some really intensive English language development. And it could be mostly, it's oral, it's mostly language, it's not literacy. That's part of our integrated ELD. But that is a technique that we use throughout the school, where for a half an hour a day and throughout the day, they're always given this structured English time that they have. And it just is basic language development for the students at their level, at their grade level. And then as they move throughout the day, we've been trained in differentiating instruction. And that sometimes is making, for example, slides or pictures for students, and also sentence frames that they can if we're doing something about inventors, and then you can say, Thomas Jefferson was an inventor of blank. And then the next one, Carver was an inventor of so-and-so. That's the same sentence frame over and over and over. And it's more language-based. We have games and songs and music during that dedicated time where the students are in small groups and they're leveled. And then the other students that, for example, are English proficient, that they go to something called ALD with academic language, and they do poetry or music or readers theater. But we have the teachers at that grade level all take an ELD class because they're the experts. Then someone like myself maybe take an intervention group, and then sometimes our resource teacher takes a group. Sometimes we have consulting educators, they take a group. And so it's small groups of students getting English language proficiency every single day. And that's just a system that's built into our district, especially at our school. It's a really dynamic school. And I've gone to see my students over the years to China, to Japan. I've been to Italy, and I've been to where else? Hawaii and New York, just to see all our students, because they're from all over the world. It's great.
Thank you both for sharing. There was a question that Aaron asked earlier that kind of related to what you were just talking about, Francisca. So either you can go deeper into the answer, or Amanda can go, but the question was, how do each of your organizations approach restorative justice training for all students and teachers?
We had an opportunity several years ago to attend a workshop, and we had teams of teachers that went. We have 9 schools, and we had an upper grade and lower grade teacher and another person, either a psychologist or a speech teacher or a resource teacher. So it was a team of 3 people from each site that went to the restorative justice training. It was based through our county Office of Education, and it was, I think it was 4 sessions throughout the year. And what we did was we went through the training, we got the manual that they had. And then what we did, we started with 1 grade level, and we did some of the activities that they did with us during a grade level time. We were released, and we were able to work just with that grade level. And then the next year we worked with another grade level. So I think we're up to the 4th or 5th grade level now. And then subsequent years, teachers have been able to go to the restorative justice practices also. And right now we're working with ADL and something called Ally to Accomplice. And that also has a social justice and a restorative justice practices built in. And it's basically, I think, helping students be responsible for their learning and having consequences for behaviors that have just caused some dysregulation within the school or within the classroom. And I think sometimes it's easier for students to regulate each other than for an adult to come in. And we try to be as proactive as we can instead of reactive. And we try to, when we know that there are some students that are struggling with different aspects of the school day, we have a team approach to that, where I come in at 8:15 and check in with the students. Did you have breakfast? And did you do your homework? And did you have enough sleep? And then the next person comes in right before recess. Maybe one of our yard supervisors comes in and talks to them and said, what are the things that we're going to work on during recess? Being safe, responsible, respectful. Okay, what does that look like? And then right before lunch, another person, maybe the principal, comes in and checks in with them. And so it's a system that we have in place that I think works well if we all really buy into it and are, are consistent with our practice, because that is a big deal. If anytime, students love consistency, they like predictability, they like to know what's happening. Anytime that breaks, sometimes that creates some disconnect, and it's hard. And that's where we see some of the behaviors escalate or some of the practices break down.
Francisca, I actually had a question for you.
Sure.
Have you seen a lot of success with, you mentioned, peer support and, students kind of learning off of each other and without adults having to intervene and step in, kind of letting them take care of their own issues. Have you found success in?
We have our 6th graders are part of, they are, what are they called? They wear a little vest, and they are peer mediators. They're peer mediators, and every week, a group of students in 6th grade are peer mediators. And anytime there's an issue with students in the playground, we have something called the power of play. There are students from the university that come and sit with students. For example, if they're in the handball court, they sit with the handball kids, they go over the rules, and then they play. And then if there's an issue, they support the student. If the students need more mediation, a 6th grader team is called, and they come and they have a series of questions that they ask the students. And basically it's, okay, what happened? And so then the students, each get a chance to say, and then the next question is, how can we make this better? And then the students generate some things. And sometimes they just need an apology. Sometimes they just need a break from that person. Sometimes they need more intervention. And if it goes beyond that, then the students refer it to the teacher or to one of the art supervisors or the office if it it escalates into something more. But I think giving students, they worked with the psychologist, she trains them, they have a little binder and a little vest, and they have a routine that they follow, and they are so empowered. And even the students, because they see a sixth grader, their cousin, their brother, their neighbor, trying to help them advocate for themselves.
Thank you so much. Ms. Greenleaf, did you have anything to add on for that?
No, I'm okay.
Alrighty.
Well, one of the things that I did want to mention, if you are interested in restorative justices and you don't have that as a school-wide system, I think there's workshops and seminars and things that you can do and bring those practices to your own classroom, and then other teachers will say, oh, what are you doing? Oh, what is that? And then you get another teacher roped in, and then the other person will say, oh, what are you doing? How come you're doing this? Or what do your circles mean? Or what does that look like when you're having a team approach to an issue? And that will spread, and that sometimes is a catalyst for change when folks know that something is working and you're promoting it, and it gets broader voices, and I think it expands.
Awesome. Did anyone else have any other questions? Okay. Well, if not, I think we can start wrapping this up. First of all, thank you to both guests for joining us on a Saturday morning. I know that this is, maybe not the best time to have an interview, but seriously, both of your insight just with your experience in the education field and, talking to us aspiring teachers, or maybe some that already are teachers, you've definitely helped us gain more insight on just different strategies that we can use, and just things that we can look out for in the future of teaching. I know that I myself struggle with just kind of the whole relaxation part of it all, right? Having to separate the education part from the home life part, and so just working in the field has been incredibly helpful to kind of understanding that. And when I was younger, I didn't really understand. I was a student myself, so I didn't really get it. But yeah, just listening to both of you today, getting that sort of that insight has definitely shined a light on just a lot of questions that a lot of us might be having. And yeah, if there are any other questions that anyone else might have, yeah, feel free to pop it in the chat. We can spotlight you. And
I just want to say that I am encouraged by this group of young professionals that are moving forward in the field of education. It is hard, and it is changing, and it is dynamic at the same time, and know that even the demographics of your student population is changing, just blended families, alternative families, different voices coming through. And so I think that you having all of this insight prior to going into that is just encouraging, very encouraging. Thank you all for choosing this field. It is a difficult but dynamic field.